It's time for a real fake news update, not brought to you by Pfizer. Let's see. Today, we're looking at the Trump and Zelensky standoff. There's been massively different interpretations of this. Obviously, if you guys are watching our show, you'll be more on the side of saying that, you know what? Zelensky kind of got his ass handed to him. Let's watch a little clip of that, but we're obviously going to break that down. There's more to the story than who won the fight. But let's look at the coverage first on what happened on mainstream media. But first, here's a clip from the actual confrontation, showdown, whatever you want to call it. Here we go.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
I'm not
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influenced.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influenced.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war,
you're not in a good position. You don't have the
the
cards right now. With us, you start having
not
cards.
playing cards.
But right now, you don't.
I'm
Yeah,
very
you're
serious,
playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're gambling
I'm
with the
president
lives
in the
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III.
What do you
You're
think
gambling
about?
with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. It's
with
back
all
to
respect to
you.
your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
That was the best moment of the speech. That was the best, or the confrontation. That was the best moment. You're gambling with World War III. That's it. I mean, and that's why we do this show, guys. And that's a big takeaway right there. That moment happened. You know, you'll never get that from Biden. We know we would never have gotten that from Biden or President Harris. Never was going to happen. So that's good. I'm going to break down some more elements of this in a bit, but let's see the reaction from mainstream media the very next day. This is on MSNBC. Look how concerned they are, how embarrassed the country is from this. Oh my God, this is just embarrassing. Trump did this to us. Let's take a look.
Well, Nicole, obviously it's a very sad day and an embarrassment for the United States on the world stage. But let's step back and analyze what's happened here. I think there's no question that this was a setup. You heard Donald Trump say at the end of that clip you played, this is great television. This was a setup. Volodymyr Zelensky was compelled to agree to a horrible deal that would have sent Ukraine's minerals to the United States without any concrete security guarantees. And yet, because he was trying to improve a relationship with Donald Trump, he came to Washington, he came to the Oval Office and sat down for a meeting, hat in hand. And soon after he got there, the vice president of the United States lit into him and started a confrontation. Now, I've been in countless Oval Office meetings with heads of state, presidents and vice presidents, as national security advisor, as UN ambassador, and in other roles. I can tell you that the vice president or the secretary of state or anybody else, they don't jump in, hijack a conversation without the express blessing of the president of the United States. So J.D. Vance did that deliberately. Donald Trump knew what he was going to do. And I think, as he said at the end, because he can't, help himself, this was a setup for the cameras. It was a play to his base, but above all, it was a play to Vladimir Putin.
Right, because no president ever plays to the camera, right? Nothing's ever for show, right? This is the first time. The audacity of a president to be fully aware that a camera's on. The audacity of a president who comes literally from reality TV and knows how to have a #1 show on TV. No, that's never happened before. Oh, and by the way, a vice president speaking up, how refreshing is that? So they're looking at every angle to try and pretend that this is not a good thing. The problem with MSNBC is that they, just like CNN, their time is running out as far as trying to push the fact that Putin is the aggressor in the situation, when Trump is the one that is having the conversation with Putin. Zelensky is not. It's very hard to continue pushing that narrative. They're doing it as long as possible. Believe me, they are. And it's still working on some people. It is working on some people, especially here in LA, Hollywood. I mean, these people, they just doubled down from this since this thing aired. I'm telling you guys, we've gotten a slew of people putting their Ukraine flag paraphernalia back into their social media profiles. It's absolutely disgusting that was their takeaway. You don't believe me? Let me show you what type of memes are going around Hollywood right now. I don't know if you guys seen any of this. This is just disgusting, because this shows us that people are still willing to listen to this garbage, any sort of spin on this thing, and not have any critical thinking about it. I mean, we want to talk about the things not being said at that table. We want to talk about more intellectual elements that come out of this. We had this discussion on Truthwire on Monday with Craig Costa, like a real discussion. These people are not willing to have any sort of discussion at all. And you can tell by a meme like this. Look, that look you give when a draft dodger tries to lecture you about war. Okay. So that's your little freeze frame of Zelensky pretending he's got some intellectual idea going on, as opposed to he's hoping to get his next line of cocaine in there as soon as possible, which we know because we've been watching his behavior the whole time. So yeah, screenshot there. That's funny. How about this one? Why don't you wear a suit? Do you own a suit? Zelensky and his country are fighting for their lives against a brutal oppressor who hates us, and Trump lets him be mocked and bullied in the Oval Office. Every real American should be ashamed. No, that suit line was genius. That's what I'm saying. But let's look. These are just little stupid memes, but let's overall, there is a message. There's a message that is keeping people afraid, keeping people on edge, keeping people hating half the country, and the media is doing this to half of this country. That's what's happening still. I don't know if you guys still engage with people like that, but again, there's so many of them here in this town. This is the overlying message that they will not let go of. This one. Once you realize that he works for Russia, not America, everything he does makes sense. No, that doesn't make any sense at all. And the fact that this thing is being passed around on Instagram, Facebook, wherever, it's insane to me that anybody thinks that makes any sense at all. You should be looking a little more carefully at what's actually happening in this administration. That the biggest problem is the Zionism. That's the biggest problem. And again, they just want to simplify. They want to simplify. But this narrative is running short. We know it's running short. This messaging that this is as easy as you can explain it. This is exactly how not to explain geopolitics and our foreign policy. This is exactly how not to explain it. Some people only understand a story if it explained it as a picture. This is the type of garbage that gets manufactured consent into things that are way more complicated than Ukraine is a dam and Russia's breaking through, and if we don't stop him, he's going to destroy Europe. This is the exact opposite of critical thinking and looking at a timeline and looking at the way history works and the way governments work and the way NATO works, the history of NATO, the history of Russia. We know Russia has never invaded anyone. They have been defending themselves ever since World War II. And the notion that Russia is left out of the storyline when we learn about World War II, we learn about America, the greatest generation coming in and saving the day from Hitler, with no mention that Russia's the one that actually stopped Hitler. We don't even get to learn about that here in the US. So when you guys dumb down this shit for your viewers, for your people that are, and if they won't even admit they're watching you, they're watching the memes that come out from your garbage reporting. This is the kind of trash they're still sharing. Now, the mainstream can't, again, this is not sustainable. At some point, you're going to have to acknowledge the polls, as CNN was forced to do after this confrontation. Here it is. They have to report on the actual polls. Check it out.
This way we can kind of just ask this is, Do Americans like the way that Trump's handling his job and compare it to how they felt about Joe Biden? So this is the net approval rating. You look at Joe Biden back in 2024, he was 22 points underwater. Holy cow. You look at Donald Trump, it's just a different planet entirely. I mean, the gulf between these two is wider than the Gulf of America or Mexico, depending on which side of the aisle you stand on. He's at +2. So look, at this particular point, Americans are giving Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt. He's doing considerably better than Joe Biden was doing on the handling of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And so on this simple question, I think Americans are saying, okay, Donald Trump's doing all right on this.
What about specifically on how they feel about bringing the war to an end?
Yeah, okay. So, look, questions on this can be quite complicated, but I think this kind of gets at sort of where the American trend line is. Americans on the Russia-Ukraine war want a quicker end of the war, but Russia keeps its captured land. Look at this, 50%, bare majority coming in here.
Just going to pause here. I like how he leads in with this is actually very, very complicated. What he means to say is it's very complicated for us here at CNN to keep confusing you about what it looks like to end the war. And that confusion is deliberate because they're trying, again, this is not a sustainable narrative. How do you end the war? Oh, you keep giving money for the war to a country, to the most corrupt country in Europe, who has no intention of having any diplomacy, never has for these 3 years at all. Or if they do intend to, we sabotage that intention, if at all. So that's what he means by it's complicated. But when you ask this question to the American people, who wants to end this thing quickly, the fact that that's up to 50% says a lot about two things. One, it says that the American people aren't as stupid as they thought they were because they're starting to figure it out. And two, it says, again, what we've been saying the whole time, your line of bullshit is not sustainable. At some point, these numbers will be seen by people as they are right now. Let's finish this up.
Support Ukraine's right to fight, even if it means a longer war. That's at 48. This is very, very close. But the trend line on this question is so important because that want a quick end of the war, look at this. You go back to August of 2022, it was at 31%. Now we're at 50%. I mean, that is a rocket ship upwards in terms of the Americans who want a quick end to the war, even if it means Russia keeps the captured Ukraine land. Americans are moving closer and closer to wanting a compromise, even if it means that Ukraine doesn't really get what it set out to want, at least at the beginning of this war.
And Americans' views on Russia are shifting as well.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the reasons why we're seeing this is Americans who say Russia is an enemy. You go back to 2023, it was 64%. In that CBS News YouGov poll, it was down to 34%.
This is great news. This is great news. This means the American people as a whole are waking up. Not so much here in Hollywood, but overall, this is great news. This is about I guess you would say about a year and a half difference. I'm not sure exactly when that 64 in 2023, but let's say roughly a year and a half. This is almost half the people of that 64 have woken up from that coma they were in, or that brain freeze they were in, or that Clockwork Orange, eyes open, glaring at the screen, telling us that Russia wants to take over the world and Putin is the next Hitler. This is great, and they have to report on this. So that's where we're at now, guys. Make no mistake about it. Even though the narration, the narration behind this theater, this Ukraine theater, is shifting. Just because it's shifting doesn't mean that even if we win this part of the battle against these propagandists, they're still going to come up with the next one. So we have to be ready for what the next one is, or how this one molds into the next thing. But again, as long as people are starting to have these aha moments, and shows like ours and our colleagues around us are getting people's attention, like you guys watching right now, then we know we're doing the best we can to beat this thing, this monster, the censorship propaganda monster that used to be journalism and is now just protecting the billionaire class. And we have to become the journalists ourselves. That is a real fake news update, not brought to you by Pfizer.